our technical advisor, Maddie Hyde.
Hey, sir, how about you shut it for a second? We're already live.
So kick back and stay tuned and enjoy the show.
Hey, your mic's on.
Is it?
Yeah.
Sure? Did you
It's
check
hot. It's
Can you hear
on.
it? Can you hear it?
Don't do that again.
Maddie,
What?
one of these days, I'm not going to have
Hey,
this
you
show.
need to watch it too. Don't touch that.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
She's bossy. I'm telling you what.
I'm used to that.
I made cracked a joke in there earlier about something, and she got all mad about it.
I did not.
Well, you acted like you did. Anyway, Mike,
Yes.
how you been?
No, slow.
Everybody knows Mike Reisner. I don't even have to introduce you. If it's just like Charlotte said in there when I said, Charlotte, you know Mike Reisner? She looked at you. What did she say? Yeah.
I've had a couple of
I've
run-ins
had a
with
couple
him,
of run-ins with him.
but I don't think I've ever met him.
Oh man. So me and Mike, and I was just telling this story before we come on the air, met in '97.
Yep.
97. Where I'm 100% sure it was '97 because I was still at the county, and you sent word to me through another guy that you wanted to meet me and maybe talk about hiring me.
Yep.
And I cracked a joke about an individual walking down the sidewalk. He said, he looks out that window and he said, "That's my wife." And never cracked a smile and let me shrink into the corner for 10 seconds before he let me off the hook. He said,
Well, that means we have the same story about meeting him because when I was talking about someone, he said, "Well, that's my cousin." So
I know, he's good at that. He's good at that.
I mean, my old tricks.
Mike, you, before I get in a little bit about your history, we've known each other 25 years. Well, 26 probably. 26. I think it was in August of '97. So, I'll have to call them back. That's I probably need to take that, but I'm gonna let it go. That might, if they call again, then I'll need to take that, and I'll have to leave it up. Y'all have to take over. But anyway, '97 is when we met. I went to work for him that same year, and I always tell people the best days of my law enforcement career was from '97 to 2000. I think it was 4. When I left. You left, didn't you leave in '02?
During the invasion.
Yep. You took that contract in Iraq. So I put in for it. I didn't get the call. You got the call. And I put in for the contract in Europe and got that one. And then we reconvened after. Matter of fact, I came back to the task force in 2004, maybe. And I worked there for a year pretty much by myself. Yeah. No, it was 2006.
Right.
Because I left in '07, and you took another contract. You remember when you took that second contract?
And, I'm not really sure. It was 07, 06.
I think I took that civilian job. I took that civilian job for the first time in my career. I mean, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I went pretty much straight into law enforcement. And then in '07, I decided I was done. I was burnt out. I was just ready to take a break from law enforcement, and I took a job for the phone company. And I think that's around the time when you took that second contract. Was you working for L3 that second time?
L3 and then Blackwater. I'd get dissatisfied with L3, and then I decided I'd be with Blackwater for a while. And actually, I took a contract here in the United States, and that was '05 with Katrina hit. Yeah, I went to Louisiana.
That's right. You was working security in Louisiana.
Excuse me.
So then, I'm gonna fast forward to 2000. 2011, I went to Iraq and worked on that contract in Baghdad for about a year and a half, and I came home, and I went back in law enforcement. I got right back in it. I got back in it in 2014 and worked there for about a year and a half at the old sheriff's office before I got elected. And then anyway, I had 3 jobs right there. But you came back. Now, you got hurt, right? Didn't you get injured?
I got too close to a car bomb, yeah. So, and that's my excuse now for being silly from every once in a while.
And half deaf.
And I say a lot, so.
Oh, Lord. So if you knew this guy right here back in the 90s and the way he is now, if you what's the word I'm looking for? If you intensified that by 1,000 times, that's the way he was.
So you're saying I would be extremely terrified.
I guess I've mellowed a little bit in the last,
Just a little?
last 50 years.
He had red hair about down to his elbow and a beard, and a red beard. And he was buying dope in Wayne County. Because I remember asking you one day, I was like, I mean, do you not ever, kind of clean up? And he says, no. He said, I don't ever. But he could walk in anywhere in the county or anywhere in the district and buy drugs.
Yeah, I was buying some cocaine in Wayne County, and this one particular person was selling me cocaine, and I bought cocaine a couple times from him, and then he got in a truck, and we went out in the side roads, and I was going to make the final buy and then arrest him. And I asked him, I said, did you ever see Andy Griffin? He said, yeah, I did. I said, I'm like old Andy. I said, I'm the law. He said, you blanking me? I said, no, that's for real. And I showed him a badge. He said, well, as I was beginning to like you, now I'm going to have to kill you. I said, no, you don't have to kill me. But I spoke the language over there, Of course, I've got a strong Southern accent. It gets me in trouble every once in a while.
Right. I think I remember. Didn't you wind up turning him into an informant?
Exactly.
Didn't that guy? He wound up being an informant and
Oh, solved a murder, solved a lot of drug deals and what have you. Yeah.
Right.
Very important. Yeah.
Now let's talk. I think most people know when they hear the name Mike Reisner, they think of your military service.
Right. Yeah.
You went in the military right out of high school, didn't you?
Well, I was picking cotton at 3 cents a pound and washing cars for $2, total detail. So I said, well, I can get a better job than that. So I crawled on the bus up there at the Greyhound in my grandfather's little country store and launched a military career, I guess.
Yeah. Now you was in Vietnam.
Vietnam. And,
How many tours did you do in Vietnam?
3.5, yeah. I lived with the Mountain Yard tribes up in the Central Highlands, and I had 5 other team members. We had 6 of us, and fluctuate from 800 to 1,200 natives, and that was our fighting force. So I went native.
Tell Maddie about the story when the captain or the colonel showed up on that helicopter and you was out there and had a dead you got a chicken, you was about to cook it or something. Tell Maddie that story.
Well, I was assigned the task of being a blocking force with my natives to a conventional unit, 4th Battalion 173rd, which was a conventional unit. And basically what I was to do is ambush the stragglers that they were in combat with.
Right.
And I showed up at the briefing. And anyway, I had a ponytail, cut off tiger fatigues, and didn't really look like I was in the Army. And they said, what are you doing here, son? I said, I'm here for a meeting. He said, "Are you in the Army?" I said, "Yes, sir." He had to call my commander and make sure, I wasn't just some homeless person.
I thought the way I remember it, you said you was in a loincloth and some flip flops.
Well, I had the shoes or the flip flops that they make out of tires.
Right.
That way they can't track you. They think you're another VC.
Right. I said, "Where's your sergeant at?" Oh, that's great. So you came. Now, your dad and your grandpa were both lawmen, right?
Exactly. Yeah. My grandfather, Ike, they called him Ira Ike Irving. He was a Irish cop in Pennsylvania. Well, my grandmother passed away, and somehow he met a local up in Mount Horeb, a Tongan lady, half his age.
A what lady?
Tongan.
Tongan.
Yeah, and that'll get somebody to move, a young woman. But anyway, he moved to Etheridge, bought a house, which is now a store. Been a store in that spot since 1942, and it's still a Greyhound agent.
Yeah.
Where the buses are. But yeah, he was a retired policeman in Carnegie, Pennsylvania, and of course my dad was a policeman, and my brother, he was in law enforcement, and my sister was running from the law.
We all got them. We all got one in the family. Yeah. So, and you was a captain at the police department. You started at the police department. And then, was you at the police department when you were chief deputy under Tom Purdom, or where did?
I left the police department as a captain and went to the sheriff's department as a chief deputy.
That's right.
He paid a little better.
Tom. So that had to have been in what
82.
82?
Yeah, pretty sure 82.
Yeah, because Tom was sheriff. Well, I started in 92, so Tom had to been, his last year in office had to been 88.
Yeah.
And he was the last sheriff, I think, that they served 2-year terms, not 4-year terms.
Right. Yeah.
So that would have been, yeah. So if he done three terms, it would have been 82 to 88. Yeah. And then Durham got elected in 92, and he was sheriff from 92 to 94.
I really enjoyed working for Purdom. Yeah, he was like Gunsmoke.
I've heard them stories too.
I was Festus.
You know, he worked court security.
Yeah.
For a while when I was there. Yeah. Sure did. I saw his son Dusty not long ago. He goes to a little church. I go to a church dinner every now and then down in Leoma, and I guess he's a member of that church because I seen him.
Oh yeah.
Seen him there. You can't miss him. He's still a big old. I mean, he was a big kid, but he's a big guy now.
Yeah. When Purdom was a sheriff, excuse me, Dusty went out there and took all the lug bolts off all the police cars. I remember that.
I think I've heard that story too. Somebody told me that. So you was police chief in Shelbyville too, but was that was before the task force? You was there when you got the call to be director at the task force, right?
Yeah.
So when Tom did you go to Shelbyville when Tom was elected out of office?
He was running again, and of course I stuck with him until he got reelected, and then when he got reelected, they offered me a pretty good job in Shelbyville. Mm-hmm. Of course, Purdom was from Shelbyville. A lot of people didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. So he had some influence on
that,
right? On getting me the job. He was a good guy.
And then, how did you find out about the director job for the task force? Was that offered to you, or did you have to put in like an application for that, or how did that happen?
Actually, we had a new city manager in Shelbyville, and a city manager type government. So politically, I knew the writing was on the wall.
Yeah,
So,
I think you told me you didn't get in. Y'all didn't get along very good, did you?
No, no, no. No, I could go into details, but I don't think the statute of limitations is still out there. But and it's not changed too much.
Yeah. So you took the director job at the task force in the late '80s.
Right. Yeah.
So you'd been there a while before I came on board.
Before that, I worked for Law Enforcement Television Network.
That's right. I remember that.
And training police officers in Alabama and Tennessee, making contracts with the satellite training system, which was new to me, but I had fun with it.
Yeah.
And then I decided, get my gun back on and do the law enforcement thing. So, and really enjoyed that. I had some good men working.
Those were the times. I mean, those were the times. That back when, the judicial drug task forces, they were kicking butt back then. I mean, they were the elite, the drug enforcement agencies around the state. I don't know when, and I guess that's probably when the judicial districts have been around for forever, I guess. But
Right.
I guess when they started the judicial drug task forces across the state, that's when it was, man, we had so much fun.
And it was a good idea because it multiple jurisdictional. They had counties, whatever sheriffs was in those districts, of course, helped out with agents and funds and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a big effort, and it worked real good. I miss it. I wish we had it to go. I'm too old now. I'm too old. But
I know. I still, the guys will go out and they'll do a search warrant. Our QRF will get geared up to go out and do a search warrant. They just done one 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, the last target I had in Iraq, I was doing criminal intelligence there in Iraq and found a Iranian bomb maker. And the deal was, I was ready. I was, in my early 60s. And I said, well, I'm going to hit that target. I'm going to put all my stuff on. I'm going to kick the door and all that. And but anyway, so I got a ODA team, which is a Special Forces team, and we could relate and what have you. And they said, well, we'll hit this target. And I said, it's real good. They brought in a laptop, and they got real vision on the location. And I'm standing there with my bulletproof vest, 6 hand grenades, an M4, and all this equipment, to ready to do the Rambo. I'm ready.
Yeah.
And it was going to be my last rodeo. And so they opened up the laptop, got the information, got it visual on it, and went, poof, drone.
Drone strike.
Yeah.
You got all geared up for nothing.
I said, you guys deprived an old man of his last rodeo. He said, oh, Pop, you say would probably killed you anyway.
Oh, Lord.
Well, what a way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, our guys served a warrant the other day, and I was a little mad that they didn't. I didn't even get invited. I didn't even get the invite. I was a little hurt. I mean, I can still go. I can kick in a door. I can vest up. I mean, I'll stack up on a door in a heartbeat. All you got to do is ask. But I didn't even get the invite. But I told a couple of them I was going to bust them down to buck sergeant next time. next time they serve a warrant and I don't even at least get an invite, I'm going to bust them all down. But when I came on at the task force, y'all had just secured that interdiction grant. And that's what I hired on, and I hired on with another guy, and I had no idea what interdiction was. I was on the outside looking in, but but I found out real quick that it's one of the best.
Wow.
It's the funnest job. I mean, just sitting there and catching the traffickers, catching the money, catching. I mean, you never know what you're going to catch out there on the interstate. It's probably the most dangerous job, but it's the funnest. I mean, we had so much fun. I mean, we'd work out there. There's no telling how many nights we worked over just because we loved doing it. You know,
Exactly.
it was a competition to see who could get the first load of dope. You know, who was going to hit the first load for the day. Sometimes we might work 2 or 3 days straight and never get anything. And we were out there doing that while y'all were local doing the undercover stuff.
Right.
And I got to do a little bit of undercover stuff, not much, but I got to do a little bit. But man, once you get that in your blood, you don't want to do nothing else.
Well,
you know, it'll consume you, won't it?
And you were at the infancy of that type of operation too, and you were very good at it, Sheriff. I tell you what, you opened the door for a lot of task force to get into interdiction with the dog and the special equipped unit too, and without any problems. I mean, that's great. And I appreciate what you
I appreciate the opportunity to do it. Like I said, that's what I was saying in there earlier before we started the show. That was my heyday. When I talk about my heyday, that was it. You know, those 6, 7 years when I worked the interstate for y'all. I remember one time we got an invite. We didn't get an invite. We was supposed to work the interstate. And I can't remember why we couldn't work the interstate. And you said, y'all need to start working that trace a little bit. Go over in Wayne County and work the Natchez Trace some. You know, there's probably all kinds of stuff coming up and down that trace. I didn't know nothing about Wayne County. Never even been to the Wayne County jail. But we went over there, and it was like the third car I stopped. And I get a guy, he's got felony warrants out of Florida. He's got drugs, he's got guns, he's got cash, he's got it all. So I arrested him, and we towed the vehicle. And Florida said they was going to extradite. I think he might have even been, now that I think about it, he might have even been, no, I started to say he might have been an escapee, but I don't think he was. I think he just had some felonies or something. But anyway, Florida wanted him, and we had charges. So I drove him up to the Wayne County jail. Now, this would have been in 98, probably. And I remember walking into that Wayne County jail back then. And I remember I walked into the lobby. And when you walked into the lobby, at the end of the lobby, there was a little office. And then there was a steel door over there on the left side of it. That was the entrance to the jail, I guess. Well, there's nobody at the desk. But over in the corner, there's a guy sitting in a chair with his feet propped up, reading a magazine in plain clothes. And I walk up, and I've got this guy handcuffed, got him by the arm, and I walk in, and I say, "Excuse me." And I never will forget it. He flipped that paper back at him, and he had on these readers. He flipped that paper over, and he looked at me, and he said, "Who are you?" I said, "Well, I'm an agent with the Drug Task Force. I've got a guy arrested off the trace." And he was looking over his glasses, and he flipped that paper back up, and he said, "Harold." And I heard somebody in the back say, "Yeah." He said, "You got somebody up front needs to see you." And I heard the keys coming, jingling, jingling, jingling. Well, here come Harold. He come out of that door. I saw that steel door swing open. He looked at me, and the first words out of his mouth, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm an agent with the Drug Task Force. I got this guy arrested. I need a warrant. I need to fill out a warrant and one of y'all's arrest reports. And I don't know who I need to tell to get a magistrate over here to sign off on the warrants. I need to swear it to him." And he said, "You don't need all that." He said, "Fill these warrants out right here, and that'll be good enough. We'll take you." And I said, and I looked at that warrant, and it looked like one that they had photocopied in the copier, but it was crooked. So half of it was missing on the piece of paper. And I looked at it and I said, this is a warrant? This is official warrant? He said, yeah. And I said, you don't need a report. I mean, you don't need a minimus or nothing. He said, all you got to do is fill all that out and sign off. I said, I got to swear to somebody, don't we? And he said, no. He said, we don't do that over here. He said, they'll come by in the morning and take it up to the judge. Perfect. Give me an ink pen. I scribbled out my warrants. Well, I'm trying to get at least my dates and times right, arrest time and all that stuff. So I said, where's your dispatch at? I said, I need to get, because we went through local dispatch on the radio. I said, I need to get some times and stuff for my notes. And he said, go around the corner, go all the way back, take the door on the right. I said, oh, so it's all right here? He said, yeah. And I said, all right, perfect. So as I'm getting back to the office, I hear rap music. Banging. I mean, it's thumping. And I get back there to that door and I hesitate. I almost turned the knob and I said, Myers, something don't feel right about this. He said this was a dispatch office and this sounds like a disco. So I eased the doorknob and I cracked it open a little bit and I was feeling for wires. And the radio went down, and I pushed the door open. The dispatcher was in there having a party, all by himself. He was the only one in there, and he was having a hoot. And I said, are you the dispatcher? He said, yeah, who are you? I said, I'm getting that a lot over here. I said, I'm an agent with the Drug Task Force. I said, I'm the guy you was talking to a little while ago. I think my number back then was 503 or 504 or something. And he said, oh, yeah. He said, what do you need? And I said, I just need to get some dates time. Anyway, I took that paper all back in there, and I set that guy down. And I said, I need to get my handcuffs. I said, I don't know what you want to do with him. I said, I just got to get my handcuffs. And I said, stand up for me. And I got my handcuffs. And I said, you going to cuff him? You want to secure him or anything? He said, no, he ain't going away. I said, sayonara, I'm out, guys. I appreciate it.
So who was the guy sitting in the chair? Was he just a rando or was he
I never found that out.
Trustee.
I never found that out.
I'm very
He could have been a
disappointed.
trustee. He
Yeah.
could have been a bondsman. I think if he'd have been a bondsman, I'd have known it. I got a feeling it was probably Harold's brother-in-law hanging around up there or something.
Just some dude chilling out?
That was my first experience
Oh.
over there in Lincoln. Now they got a real nice big facility.
That reminded me of a similar situation when it was in the 70s, a long time ago. And they didn't have many officers laid out at night. And so anyway, they were fighting at the old, what is a museum now, used to be a county jail.
Yeah, the old jail.
And the old jail. And the current sheriff called me and said, look, they're fighting in the jail. They're killing each other in the jail because the trustee called me. Well, the trustee happened to be, without giving his name, we called him Otis, my godfather. But anyway, so I go to the old jail, and I could hear him as soon as I got out of the unit. I could hear him, and Otis was standing on the front porch, and he said, Mike, they're killing each other in there. And I said, well, here. I said, you take my gun. I said, because I don't want to go in there with my gun. I got me a stick. So, I said, lock me in there. I said, no matter what, don't open that door until I tell you to open the door.
Right.
So Otis is standing on the porch with my gun. All right. So then the sheriff, I don't know if I want to tell his name or not. It was in the 70s. You can figure it out a long time ago. Sheriff slides up in the driveway, and there's Otis with a gun. So the sheriff puts his hand up and says, now Otis.
You thought Otis done knocked you in the head and took your pistol.
So anyway, see, He said, "Where'd you get that gun?" He said, "Well, Mike, give it to me." "Where's Mike at?" "Well, I locked him up." So why'd you lock him up? "Well, he told me to."
Oh, Lord, I bet that sheriff was wondering what in the heck is going on.
Absolutely, but that was we got everything calmed down, unlocked, and let me out.
Got your pistol back?
Got my pistol back.
That's a good trustee right there.
Yeah. We've had some like that. We had one. I remember we had two of them. I'll tell this quick story, and then we'll talk about a little bit about what we were supposed to talk about. And I won't tell you the names of the trustees neither, but we got one in that looks just like the one that used to be in there. He had hair. He looked like Jesus. You know, he had hair down to his butt, and he had a beard down to his belly button. And he stayed locked up all the time for drunk and disorderly, and I think he dabbled a little bit in pills and stuff. And then the other guy, he was a little old man. He was old then, and this was 25 years ago. 26, 27 years ago, and somebody had brought him a bottle. I don't know who it was. Somebody brought him a bottle, and that's back when the jail, in the old jail, where the front booking room, jailer's office was right next to dispatch office, and then in the back was a break room. Well, they were back there mopping and cleaning. And they had got somebody dropped them a bottle of fighting cock or wild turkey or something. I don't know what it was, but they drank that whole bottle of whiskey. Well, they got into it. And they were both so drunk they couldn't fight. Well, the dispatcher, I'm sitting in the front office because I was the jailer, and the dispatcher, she said, "John, get in here. They're killing each other." And I says, "What is going on?" She said, "They're killing each other." And I come around there. And they was both so drunk, they done spilt the mop bucket and got the floor wet and couldn't stand up, and they couldn't walk anyway, and they sure couldn't walk on a wet floor. And one of them had snapped the mop handle in half and was going to impale the other one, and he was gigging at him. He was gigging at him like he was trying to gig a frog. And I walked in there and I said, "Put that damn stick down." And he said. He throwed it down. He throwed his hands up, and he said, "I give up. I give up. Take me. Lock me up. Lock me up." But somebody, we never did figure out who it was that brought him that bottle of whiskey. But they got fired up, man. But them trustees, they're a lot of fun. You know, you get good ones. But for the most part, your trustees are your town drunks. You know that there's a little bit of trust there that they're not going to run off. But yeah, they got liquored up. What do you think, Mike? Is what I wanted you to come on here for this evening was to talk about drugs. Your career has mostly been in drug enforcement. My career has mostly been in drug enforcement. What we're seeing now is unlike anything we've seen before. And I mean, you started. I mean, in the 80s, I mean, it was crack cocaine and powder cocaine, pills and marijuana. That was pretty much the big four.
Right.
And crack was just made from powder cocaine. What we see now is some of the most addictive things I've ever seen. You talk to people that's strung out on methamphetamine. They'll tell you they cannot physically get off of it by themselves. They can't quit it cold turkey. They can't. Their body will not let them away from it, and they've got to have some long-term rehab. But what do you think? Number one, when did you see it start to swing, as far as the different types of drugs when we switched from cocaine to methamphetamine, and why do you think now that it's fentanyl that's starting to take the place of meth?
Well, everybody knows we have a big problem, crisis at the border.
Mm-hmm.
That's where 90% is coming from, and it's not controlled. My experience in the Middle East, they control those borders. I'm telling you, and
Oh yeah.
they're so against, rightfully so, because it's killing their children. The drugs are, so they take it very seriously. And in the few years that I was in the Middle East, I had one drug case. They deal with it severely. Matter of fact, the one that was smuggling heroin through Baghdad and en route to Jordan, where they had customers, once they got them on the side of the road, they executed them.
That'll fix it.
That'll fix it.
That'll deter you from trying it again.
Of course, I'm not saying that we need to do that here in the United States, but we need to deal with it harsher.
Mm-hmm.
I can't emphasize it too much. We need to control the borders. We need to take the profit out of drugs.
Well, it's funny you mentioned profit, and I know you haven't been in drug enforcement in what, 10 plus years?
Yeah, about 10 plus. Yeah, oh yeah.
You wouldn't believe how hard it is to seize property or currency now. You wouldn't believe it. Back in the day when we were in the drug task force days, we cleaned them out. We put them out of business.
Right.
When we would serve a search warrant, we took everything. If they didn't have a receipt where they purchased it legally, and they couldn't tell us where it came from, we took it. I can remember taking the rings off
and
their fingers.
Tennis shoes, yeah.
Taking their $150 tennis shoes and their flat screens and their vehicles and furniture, and we would clean them out. We'd put them out of business. Now it might not be for just a few days, but at least we did it.
Exactly.
And we would sign off on everything on a seizure notice, and we'd go in front of the judge and we'd say, Judge, this is what we seized, and this is why we seized it. This is why we think it's dirty. It was either a conveyance or it was proceeds from drug sales. And they signed off on it. The bad guy would have to petition a $350. He'd have to sign a $350 petition to go and have a hearing on it. And then it went in front of a civil judge. And I don't really ever remember having to give property back then, for the most part, unless there was some kind of a civil settlement, before. But I don't know. I've been out of it a little while. My drug guys were telling me now you got to have a probable cause hearing. So if I find currency, if I say I find 80 grand in $10,000 increments on you, you're a known drug violator. There was a K9 alert on your vehicle, but you didn't have any drugs, but you had 80 grand, and it was packaged consistent with what we know to be proceeds from drug sales. Exactly. I take all that information. You still get to appear in front of the local judge, and I can't remember, there's a time frame. It might be 7 days, 5 days, 10 days, I don't know. But you get to appear and argue your case before it ever goes to the DOS legal office now. And every year they try to tighten it up to where you can't seize property anymore. It's getting to the point to where we're not going to be able to seize property. We're not going to be able to seize vehicles or currency. It's frustrating. But back in the day, we cleaned them out.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
And it was a deterrent.
There's an attorney, I can say his name, Zimmerman, up in Davison County. He prosecuted money laundering cases, and that's what we learned how to do that from Davison County Drug Task Force.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very effective, very effective. If they had funds during the sale of drugs, then how they spent those drugs, you'd track them, and that's another charge, money laundering, cleaning the money up. We need to do more of that. Of course, I've been out so long that I'm not in touch with what the laws are now, especially with drugs. I know what they will be if they come on my property.
I agree. Yeah.
But
No, they've made it, the laws have made it tougher on law enforcement to seize property, seize currency, seize, everything. It's nothing like what it used to be. And a big part of it was just our representatives are just kind of they're bowing down when they should be standing up. And I won't say the reporter's name, but you probably remember him when he was doing the police and for profit investigative story for one of those channels up there, and they were talking to the bad guys, and they were saying, well, they took my money for no reason. Well, they didn't, but they started getting pressure from the liberal media, and it was just a matter of time before the laws started changing, and they have. And I've said it before. I mean, it's easier. It's a little bit easier to catch drug dealers now, but it's a lot harder to catch the smart ones. It's a lot harder because there's very seldom currency transactions anymore. Everything's going through these. What's some of the apps?
You
the
mean
money.
to tell me
the
that
Venmo.
Venmo?
What's the Apple one?
You can do Apple Pay.
Apple Pay, Venmo.
So technically, you can really use your credit card for drugs or Venmo
Sure.
or.
And a lot of
That is insane.
and a lot of the drugs are going through the mail system. We used to have a lot of cooperation. I'm not saying anything bad about UPS or FedEx or the Postal Service, but we used to have a lot of cooperation.
Oh, exactly.
You can remember when we would go with the dogs and run the belts that's carrying all the boxes, the conveyor belts. We'd put our dogs up there, and they would just, as the packages would go by, the dogs would just sniff. That's all they would do for hours, And we'd go into a warehouse and do walk-arounds. And we were successful at it, and they wanted us in there. Not anymore.
Wow.
Not anymore. They don't want us. For the most part, they don't want us coming in. I've talked to some of the people with the Postal Service and FedEx and UPS, and they're like, no, what they'll say is, well, we got to get approval from higher up, and then the higher up says, well, we got to get approval from higher up, and then eventually it goes up to wherever,
Right.
and they finally
Disappeared,
said, and they either say, yeah, the higher ups don't think it's a good idea, and then, so I mean, it is tougher. It's tougher in some ways, but it's easier in some ways too.
I know up there in Etheridge, my grandfather's little store there, when the Greyhound bus would stop, periodically they'd run a dog through it.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't see that anymore.
No, and it's a shame because, like I said, we were successful with it, and I think that's why a lot of the drugs are going through the mail system right now. Because I mean, they really can't do anything. They can't, and I mean, they're now that they've legalized hemp. I was talking to the postmaster at one of our post offices about a month ago. He said it seems like every day a package comes through here that just reeks of marijuana.
Wow.
But now, with hemp being legal, it's almost impossible to get a warrant to open the package. So that's just one more thing that's complicated. But was you still at the task force when we got that last big seizure on the interstate? I think it was 3 kilos of meth, and then they had like 20 pounds of marijuana in the trunk.
No, I missed that one. That's a good lick.
I couldn't remember. It was the last good drug stop I made out there on the interstate. But that's the first time I saw crystal meth. I hadn't saw it before, and it was a couple of Hispanics headed up to Louisville with it. They'd went down to Birmingham and picked it up and was headed back north with it, and I never will forget because the car reeked of marijuana. When I got up to the passenger side window, I could smell marijuana coming from the vehicle. It was in a speaker box in the trunk, but still it was strong enough to where I was smelling it from outside of the vehicle. And I remember when I got under the passenger side seat, the carpet under the seat frame was bulged up, so you could see that they had tried to put something under there. And when I grabbed the carpet and pulled it back, I could see cellophane. So I think it was 3 kilos, 3 bricks out, and it still smelled like marijuana from outside. So I thought, but it didn't. It wasn't consistent with what a package of marijuana looked at. And I remember I took my knife and cut into it and peeled it back, and it looked like rock salt. And I said, "This ain't marijuana." I can't remember who was my partner out there at the time. And anyway, we wound up doing a controlled delivery at a hotel up in Nashville. They called the bad guy, the money guy, and he wound up meeting them down there with the money. And anyway, we got with Metro, and we wound up getting the money and the drugs and everything else. But that was the first time I saw methamphetamine. And I remember thinking, man, if this stuff right here takes off in southern Middle Tennessee, we got a problem.
Right.
And it did. It did. And then it changed. Everything changed. People could function. People could, for the most part, function on powder cocaine. They could function, smoke weed. They could function eating a pill every now and then. They could have a family. They could have nice stuff. You remember some of those guys we hit? They had a lot of nice stuff.
They did, yeah, exactly.
Motorcycles, jet skis, four-wheelers, nice houses, Kubota tractors. I mean, these meth dealers, they don't have nothing. This guy that we just got 3 weeks ago with 1.5 pounds of methamphetamine, living in a camper. Living in a camper. Driving a car that looked like it got hit by a train.
It destroys everything. I mean, it's I don't know how to put it in words. The families, and it's not only the person that takes it, but everybody around them, family, friends. It's a destructive drug.
That's the difference, and I think you'll agree with me that the drug dealers back then, you could when you put them out of business, you put the community, you put that whole area, you hurt the whole area. All the users in 30 square miles was suffering because you put that dude out of business. We really don't have that level meth dealers. Well, number one, most meth dealers are users themselves.
Users, yeah.
And number two, you could pattern a cocaine dealer and a marijuana dealer. You remember setting up a cocaine deal. You set it up, CI calls you up and says, "Hey, this guy right here's got a bunch of dope he's wanting to sell me. You want me to go in and buy it? Yeah, let me meet you." Give him the buy money, give him the recording device, send him in, and it's over with in like 15 minutes. You got a buy. You set up a buy with a meth dealer, it's like 4 hours. because the CI will call you up and he'll say, "Hey, I got a guy wanting to sell me some meth. You in on it?" And you're like, "Yeah, let's go do it." So you go hook up with him. You got to drive 4 counties over and pick him up because he don't have a driver's license. You bring him back over. You give him the buy money, and you send him off. And then the dealer has got to go to another guy, and he's got to pick it up from that guy. And when he gets there, he ain't there yet, so he's got to wait for an hour before that guy finally shows up. And when he shows up, he don't have what he said he had, and he's got to go over to this other guy's house to get the rest of it. It's the biggest debacle you ever seen in your life. Ask any. I think I was talking to Bill Doley the other day, and he was saying the same thing. He says, "You know how these meth deals go." He said, "We've been on this one for 4.5 hours."
Yeah, yeah. I haven't seen Bill in years.
He ain't changed a bit. He ain't changed not one bit. He don't look any different, act any different. I guarantee you if he walked in that door right now, you'd say the same thing. He ain't changed a bit. But how much time we got?
You got about like 7-8 minutes.
7-8 minutes? But when I think the biggest problem, and most of your small town sheriffs and chiefs and drug agents will tell you, when we saw the biggest impact from methamphetamine is when we saw the shake and bake method, or what they call the one pot method. This idiot, and I'm telling you, this guy, if I could find this one guy right now, I'd probably choke him until he passed out. This guy that come up with this idea that you could cook meth in a 2-liter Coke bottle with some lithium batteries and some Coleman fluid and some Red Devil lye, and you can go to Walmart and you can get everything you need to make methamphetamine. And every drug head, meth head, redneck out there, all the way from Florida to Kentucky, thought that they was a meth cook,
Right.
thought that they was a chemist. And that's when we saw it really start to degrade. That's when you started to see all the homeless, the mental health problems, the neighborhoods getting run down and junked out, and the houses being abandoned. That's when I noticed it when I came home from Iraq and I saw my little hometown, Summertown, and I saw that Summertown was always a really quiet, nice little town.
Exactly, yeah.
And when I came home, of course, I'd been out for like 7 years, 6, 7 years, 5 years. And I was like, what in the world is going on? This is like something you don't ever see. I mean, this isn't Summertown. What's going on? Old methed out people, all geeked out, walking down the road. I mean, obviously under the influence of methamphetamine. Got the bugs. You know how they act when they got the bugs. Houses, nice houses, had just been let go and ransacked and run down. And that's the reason why I got back in law enforcement. But that's what that drug did. That's what it done. I mean, I forget how many meth labs the state of Tennessee took down in 1 year. You can probably get on the TBI website and research it. But that's when it changed. When the one pot method, whenever this genius, this idiot that figured out how to make methamphetamine, you could go buy a box of Sudafed, and in a couple hours you'd have, I forget, a box maybe yielded 4 grams or something of meth is what they would get out of it. But it was you talk to all the meth heads, they tell you, I mean, it's as pure, it's as good as meth as you can find. But then all the laws came in. They made it the law that really changed that was they made it made it illegal to be caught with the components. You didn't have to be caught with methamphetamine. If you got caught with
Precursors, yeah.
the Sudafed, the Red Devil lye, the lithium batteries, the Coleman fluid, that was enough, and that would get you a felony. And then you had to start signing for Sudafed. You couldn't get it over the counter. You had to go up and ask for it, and you had to put your name and your driver's license number and all that stuff. And then the cartels said, hold on a minute. We don't have all that stuff in place. We don't have any laws telling us we can't do this. And the cartels were smart. They said, we can start making it down here a lot cheaper.
Exactly, and that's the problem now. It's a big problem.
Mm-hmm. I still get those block. Remember the block reports I used to get from Blue Lightning, that would show all the seizures across the southeast. Well, I still get them now. You should see some of the pictures of those super labs that they take down along the border, because a lot of it comes into the United States in liquid form, and they've got to cook it. They've got to put it back in the crystal form. You should see those meth labs.
Wow.
I mean, one yield is a quarter ton. They're getting a quarter ton in one cook.
One cooking.
It's crazy how much of that's coming across the board. We about out of time?
Yeah, 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Mike?
Yep.
Man, I'm telling you what, time flies when you're having fun,
Well,
don't
I'm telling you, good seeing you, Sheriff. I tell you what.
it? You need to come back. You need to come back and
Like
sit
I said,
in.
part 1, part 2.
Part 2, we'll do a part 2. We'll get somebody else in here. We'll see if we can get Bill Doley or somebody else in here.
Okay.
We'll call him up. We'll get one of the guys from years past and get him in here and we'll yak it
You'll
up.
have to get you a buzzer.
Start beeping out the language.
Beep, beep.
All right, we'll see y'all. Appreciate it, Mike.
Yeah,
Good seeing
no
you.
problem.